My sister stole my inheritance, but Grandma's hidden letter exposed the truth about everything. Grandma wants to see you. I looked up from my laptop to find my sister Victoria standing in my doorway, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the frame. Something about her expression made my stomach tighten, a hint of smugness that seemed out of place given our grandmother's condition. "I just saw her this morning," I said, checking the time. It was barely past noon. Dr. Mitchell said she needed rest. Victoria's lips curved into what might have been a smile, but there was nothing warm about it. "Well, she's asking for you now, unless you're too busy with your little writing projects to spend time with our dying grandmother." The jab was typical. Victoria always found ways to diminish my work as a novelist while flaunting her own success in real estate. I closed my laptop and stood, refusing to take the bait. "I'll go now." My name is Olivia Bennett, and for the past 3 months, I've been living in my grandmother Eleanor's mansion, helping care for her as pancreatic cancer slowly took her from us. Victoria visited occasionally, usually when the lawyers were around, but I was the one who sat with Grandma through sleepless nights, who held her hand during chemo, who read to her when her eyes were too tired to focus on the pages herself. The mansion's long hallways echoed with memories as I made my way to Grandma's room. Every antique, every painting, every creaking floorboard had a story. I'd grown up exploring these corridors, discovering hidden nooks and treating the whole place like my personal wonderland. Victoria had always preferred the country club, spending time with the right people, building connections she could use later. Outside Grandma's door, I paused. Voices drifted through the heavy oak, Victoria's, lawyer Mr. Whitman's, and someone from the bank. My heart sank. This wasn't a social call. I knocked softly and entered to find Grandma propped up in her massive 4-poster bed, looking frailer than she had that morning. Victoria stood by the window, that same smug smile playing at her lips. 2 men in expensive suits sat in the antique chairs by the bed. "Olivia, darling," Grandma said, her voice weaker than I remembered. "Come sit with me." I moved to her side, taking her thin hand in mine. Her skin felt like paper, so delicate I was afraid it might tear. "Should I come back later?" I asked, eyeing the lawyers. No, Mr. Whitman said smoothly. "We finished our business. Your grandmother just needs to sign a few papers." Victoria stepped forward, holding out an elegant fountain pen, Grandpa's old one, I realized with a start. "It's ready, Grandma," she said, just like we discussed. Something felt wrong. Grandma's hand trembled as she took the pen, and her signature was barely legible as she scratched it across the documents. Mr. Whitman gathered them quickly, tucking them into his briefcase with an efficiency that seemed almost rehearsed. "What was that about?" I asked after they'd left, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just some updates to my will, dear," Grandma said, her eyes already drooping. "Victoria's been so helpful explaining all the legal terminology." She drifted off to sleep before finishing the sentence. I tucked the blankets around her, my mind racing. Victoria had never shown much interest in legal matters before, unless there was something in it for her. "She's just trying to make things easier," Victoria said from the doorway, as if reading my thoughts. "Unlike some people, I actually understand business matters." I turned to face her. "What did you do, Victoria?" She examined her perfect manicure, unbothered by my tone. "I helped Grandma make some sensible decisions about her estate. Someone had to, while you were busy playing nurse and working on your little stories." "They're not stories," I said, fighting to keep my voice down. "I'm a published author. My last book was nominated for—" Yes, some literary award nobody's heard of," she waved her hand dismissively. "Meanwhile, I've tripled my real estate portfolio this year alone. I know how to manage wealth, Olivia, how to make it grow. Grandma understands that." Before I could respond, Grandma stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of distress. I hurried back to her side, adjusting her pillows and checking her pain medication levels. By the time I looked up again, Victoria was gone. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered the mansion's dark halls. The place felt different after sunset, more mysterious, serious, as if the antiques and artwork were trying to tell me something. I found myself in Grandma's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound books and family photographs. A picture on her desk caught my eye, me at my college graduation, standing between Grandma and Grandpa, his proud smile, Grandma's elegant pose, my own face beaming with possibility. Grandpa had passed away 2 years later, leaving Grandma to manage their considerable fortune alone. She'd done more than manage it. Eleanor Bennett was a force of nature, turning my grandfather's successful manufacturing business into a diverse empire of investments and real estate. Victoria liked to brag about her business acumen, but she learned everything she knew from Grandma. Movement in the hallway made me freeze. Victoria's voice drifted through the door, speaking in hushed tones on her phone. "It's done." "No, she has no idea. The old woman signed everything today. Trust me, by this time next month it'll all be mine." My blood ran cold. The smugness, the lawyers, the mysterious documents, it all made sense now. Victoria had somehow convinced Grandma to change her will, probably taking advantage of the confusion caused by her medication. I wanted to confront her immediately, to wake Grandma and demand answers, but I knew that in her weakened state, any confrontation could be dangerous for her. I needed to be smart about this, to figure out exactly what Victoria had done before making my move. The next morning, I called the one person who might be able to help. Mark Sullivan, my best friend since college, and now a junior partner at a law firm across town. "A new will?" he said when I explained my suspicions. "That's tricky, Liv. If she was competent when she signed it—" "She's on heavy pain medication," I argued. "Victoria must have caught her during a lucid moment, but you know how the drugs affect her judgment." Mark sighed. "Look, I can make some discreet inquiries, but unless we can prove undue influence or lack of capacity, there might not be much we can do." I spent the next few weeks gathering evidence while continuing to care for Grandma. Her decline accelerated, and since she was sleeping most of the day, Victoria visited more frequently now, always with documents for Grandma to sign, always when she was most heavily medicated. I documented everything: dates, times, medications, who was present. I took photos of the pill bottles, noted Grandma's mental state, recorded conversations with my phone, but it felt like trying to hold back the tide with a paper cup. One afternoon, I was helping Grandma sort through some old photographs when she suddenly gripped my hand with surprising strength. "The blue room," she whispered, her eyes intense. "Behind the painting of the lighthouse. Remember." Before I could ask what she meant, Victoria swept in with another lawyer in tow. "Grandma, Mr. Patterson is here about those property transfers we discussed." I was ushered out of the room, Grandma's cryptic message echoing in my mind. The blue room had been her private study, a place where even Victoria and I weren't allowed to play as children. And the lighthouse painting? I remembered it hanging above an antique writing desk, one of Grandma's favorite pieces. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I slipped into the blue room. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting strange shadows on the walls. The lighthouse painting hung exactly where I remembered, its pale beam seeming to wink at me in the darkness. I reached for the frame, my heart pounding. It swung away from the wall easily, revealing a small wall safe behind it, but without the combination, it was useless. I tried a few meaningful dates: Grandma's birthday, the day she married Grandpa, the year the company was founded. Nothing worked. A noise in the hallway sent me scrambling back to my room, the safe's contents remaining a mystery. The next day, Grandma took a turn for the worse. The hospice nurse increased her medication, and she drifted in and out of consciousness. Victoria practically moved into the mansion, bringing an endless parade of lawyers and bankers through Grandma's room. I kept trying to get a moment alone with Grandma to ask about the safe, but Victoria was always there, hovering, controlling access like a jealous guard dog. 2 weeks later, Grandma Eleanor Bennett passed away quietly in her sleep. I was holding her hand when it happened, reading to her from her favorite Jane Austen novel. Victoria was at a business lunch. The funeral was exactly the kind of elaborate affair Victoria loved: hundreds of guests, expensive flowers, catered reception at the country club. I sat in the front row, numb with grief, while Victoria worked the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser. "Such a tragedy," I overheard her telling someone, "but at least everything's been properly arranged. The estate will be in capable hands." The will reading was scheduled for the following Monday. As I drove to the lawyer's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. Victoria's new Mercedes was already parked outside, gleaming in the morning sun like a well-polished threat. Mr. Whitman's office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place that reeked of old money and quiet power. Victoria sat in one of the visitor chairs, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than I made in 3 months as a writer. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Whitman asked, adjusting his wire-rim glasses. What happened next felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. The new will, signed just weeks before Grandma's death, left everything. The mansion, the business interests, the investments, everything to Victoria. My inheritance had been reduced to a small trust fund that would pay out a modest monthly stipend. "Are you sure this is right?" I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Grandma always said she wanted to split things equally. "The previous will was revoked," Mr. Whitman said smoothly. "Your grandmother was very clear about her final wishes." Victoria stood, gathering her designer purse. "Well, I should get started. There's so much to manage." She paused by my chair, her smile sharp as a razor. "Don't worry, little sister. I'll let you keep your room in the mansion for now, though you might want to start looking for a small apartment, something more appropriate to your means." I sat there long after they'd left, staring at the copy of the will in my hands. Everything we'd grown up believing, all of Grandma's promises about preserving the family legacy for both of us, gone with a few strokes of a pen. But as I drove back to the mansion, no longer my home, I realized with a fresh wave of pain, I remembered Grandma's last cryptic message, the blue room, the lighthouse painting. She'd been trying to tell me something. That night, I waited until Victoria retired to the master's suite. She'd already moved into Grandma's room before making my way to the blue room. The lighthouse painting swung aside as I once again tried to crack the safe's combination. Just as I was about to give up, a memory surfaced. Grandma teaching me to play chess when I was 7, telling me that sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one. On a hunch, I tried the chess notation for her favorite opening move, E4. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single envelope, my name written in Grandma's elegant handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, and what I found inside would change everything, but I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that the game wasn't over. It was just beginning. My hands trembled as I unfolded the contents of Grandma's envelope. Inside, I found a letter, a small brass key, and what looked like a bank statement from the Cayman Islands. "My dearest Olivia," the letter began in Grandma's familiar, elegant script. "If you're reading this, then 2 things have happened. I'm no longer with you, and Victoria has shown her true colors. I've watched her manipulate and scheme her way through life, always taking the easy path, never understanding the true value of what we built. But you, my darling girl, you have your grandfather's heart and my mind, a dangerous combination." I sank into Grandma's old leather chair, my heart pounding as I continued reading. "The key enclosed opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 2247. What you find inside will help you restore balance to our family legacy. Victoria believes she knows everything about our family's wealth, but your grandfather and I were smarter than that. We never kept all our eggs in one basket." The bank statement showed a balance that made my eyes widen. Over $50 million in an offshore account, completely separate from the family's known assets. "But be careful, my dear," the letter continued. "Victoria is more dangerous than you know. The night your grandfather died wasn't the peaceful passing everyone believes it to be. I've spent years gathering evidence, protecting you both while trying to understand the truth. Now that burden passes to you." I nearly dropped the letter. Was Grandma suggesting that Victoria had something to do with Grandpa's death? The implications were staggering. A noise in the hallway made me quickly return everything to the safe, except the key, which I slipped into my pocket, just in time. Victoria appeared in the doorway, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than my car. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded, eyes narrowing. "Just remembering," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. This was always Grandma's favorite room. "Well, it's my house now," she said, walking in and running her hand possessively along the antique desk. "And I'm thinking of renovating. All these old things, they're so dated." I watched her examine the lighthouse painting, my heart racing. Did she know about the safe behind it? But she just wrinkled her nose and moved on. "You should start packing," she added casually. "I'm having the house redecorated next week, and your room needs to be cleared out." The will gives me full control of the property," she cut in, her smile sharp. "And I'm exercising that control. You have until Friday." After she left, I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about Grandma's letter. If what she suggested was true, my sister wasn't just greedy, she was dangerous. The next morning, I called Mark. "I need your help," I said when he picked up. "What do you know about Cayman Islands banking laws?" "Enough to know I should pretend you didn't ask me that," he replied. "What's going on, Liv?" We met at a small cafe far from the mansion where I showed him copies I'd made of the documents from the safe. His eyes widened as he read. "This is significant," he said finally. "If these accounts exist, they were never included in the estate inventory, and these allegations about your grandfather's death. Can you help me access the safety deposit box?" I asked. "I don't want to do it alone." He nodded slowly. "First thing tomorrow. But Liv, be careful. If Victoria realizes what you've found—" "She won't," I assured him, though my stomach turned at the thought. That afternoon, as I packed my room, I found myself looking at old family photos. One in particular caught my eye, Victoria and me as children, standing with Grandpa in his study. He was showing us his collection of rare coins, something that had fascinated us both as kids. Victoria was holding one, smiling at the camera, while I examined another with a magnifying glass. The memory hit me suddenly, Grandpa teaching us about numismatics, explaining how some coins were worth millions to the right collector. His collection had been extensive, worth a fortune. But after his death— "The coins," I whispered. They hadn't been listed in any of the estate inventories at the time. Everyone assumed they'd been sold years ago. But what if— The next morning, Mark met me outside First National Bank just as it opened. The process of accessing the safety deposit box was surprisingly straightforward. Grandma had already added my name to the access list. When the bank officer left us alone in the viewing room, my hands shook as I inserted the key. Inside the box was another envelope, a USB drive, and a small leather-bound notebook. "Your grandfather's journal," I breathed, recognizing his handwriting. The envelope contained detailed records of transactions, offshore account numbers, and, most importantly, a complete inventory of Grandpa's coin collection, which according to the documents had been secretly moved to a private vault in Switzerland just days before his death. "Look at this," Mark said, pointing to one of the transaction records, a wire transfer from Victoria's personal account to an unlisted number in the Cayman Islands, dated the day before your grandfather died. "But she was just starting out then," I said, frowning. "She wouldn't have had this kind of money, unless she was working with someone else." "Someone who stood to gain from your grandfather's death," Mark suggested. The USB drive contained video files, security footage from the mansion's old camera system. With trembling fingers, I plugged it into my laptop. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Victoria in Grandpa's study late at night, arguing with a man I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it was the night before Grandpa died. "You promised me control," Victoria was saying. "Once he's gone, I get everything." The man's response was inaudible, but his body language was threatening. Victoria looked scared but determined. The next clip showed Grandpa in his study the following evening, drinking from his usual whiskey glass. Hours later, the cameras caught Victoria and the same man removing something from the study, Grandpa's briefcase, the one he always kept his most important documents in. "This is evidence of conspiracy," Mark whispered. "But to prove murder, we need more." I opened Grandpa's journal, flipping to the last entries. His normally neat handwriting was shaky, urgent. V meeting with M again. "Can't trust. Changed my will today. Eleanor knows something's wrong. Coins moved, safe in Zurich, account numbers in—" The rest was illegible, but it was enough. Grandpa had known something was wrong. He tried to protect the family's assets, working with Grandma to move things offshore before it was too late. "We need to move carefully," Mark advised. "Victoria has legal control of the estate right now. One wrong move, and she could liquidate everything before we can stop her." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria and moving company arrives tomorrow at 9. "Anything left in your room gets thrown out." I looked at Mark, my mind racing. "How quickly can you file an injunction?" "Give me an hour with these documents," he said, already pulling out his phone. "And Liv, don't go back to the mansion alone." But I had to go back. There was something else in the blue room safe, something I'd glimpsed but hadn't had time to grab, a small red notebook that could only be Grandma's private diary. "I'll be careful," I promised, gathering the documents. "Just get that injunction." As I drove back to the mansion, storm clouds gathered overhead. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning of things to come. Victoria's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar black SUV. I let myself in quietly, making my way to the blue room. But as I approached, I heard voices, Victoria and a man arguing in heated whispers. "She knows something," the man was saying. His voice was familiar, the same one from the security footage. "The bank called," Victoria snapped. "She accessed the box this morning." Impossible. She's nothing but a wannabe writer. She doesn't know anything about... I must have made a noise because they both suddenly fell silent. Then footsteps headed toward the door. I turned to run, but I wasn't fast enough. "Well," Victoria said from behind me, her voice cold as ice, "it seems my little sister has been quite busy today." I spun around to face her and the man, tall, expensively dressed, with cold eyes that assessed me like I was a bug to be squashed. "Missing something?" Victoria asked, holding up Grandma's red diary. "Maybe this?" The man took a step forward, and I realized I was trapped between them and the stairs. "We need to talk, little sister," Victoria said, her smile sharp as broken glass, about family secrets, and why some of them should stay buried. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the scene like a macabre photograph. In that instant, I saw something in Victoria's eyes I'd never seen before, not just greed or anger, but genuine darkness, and I knew that everything was about to change. Thunder cracked overhead as I faced my sister and her mysterious companion in the mansion's dark hallway. Victoria held Grandma's diary like a weapon, her manicured nails digging into its worn red cover. "Marcus," she said, her eyes never leaving my face, "why don't you make sure we're not interrupted?" The man, Marcus, moved to block the stairs, effectively cutting off my escape route. "Now then," Victoria continued, stepping closer, "let's discuss what you found in that safety deposit box." My mind raced. Mark would be filing the injunction soon, but legal protection wouldn't help if I didn't make it out of here. I needed to play this carefully. "Just some old photos," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Memories of better times, before you started conspiring to kill our grandfather." The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's perfectly composed expression cracked for just a moment, surprise, then fear, then something darker flashing across her face. "You always did have an overactive imagination," she said, but her voice wavered slightly. "All those silly stories you write. Is that what this is? Another one of your fantasies?" "The security footage isn't a fantasy," I shot back. "Neither are the bank records showing your payment to Marcus the night before Grandpa died." Marcus took a step forward, but Victoria held up her hand to stop him. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "What happened to Grandpa was unfortunate but natural. Everyone knows that." Grandma knew better. I nodded toward the diary in her hands. "That's why she kept records, isn't it? Why she spent years gathering evidence. She was protecting me while building a case against you." Victoria's laugh was sharp and brittle. "Protecting you? Poor, naive Olivia. Grandma was protecting her money, just like everyone else in this family. Why do you think she changed her will at the end? Because you manipulated her while she was dying." "I helped her see reason," Victoria snapped. "This family's wealth needs someone strong to manage it, someone who understands business, not some dreamer who spends her time making up stories." "Is that what you told Grandpa too?" I asked quietly. "Before you and Marcus poisoned his whiskey?" The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My cheek stung as Victoria grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "You need to be very careful about what accusations you make," she hissed. Just then, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. Victoria kept her grip on my arm as she checked her screen. I watched her face pale as she read what I knew must be notice of the injunction Mark had filed. "What did you do?" she demanded, shaking me. A calm settled over me, the kind of clarity that comes when you know you've finally gained the upper hand. I did exactly what Grandma and Grandpa prepared me to do. I protected our family's true legacy. "Marcus!" Victoria's voice rose with panic. "She's frozen our access to the estate. Call Harrison. Tell him to start liquidating everything now." "That won't work," I said, unable to keep the satisfaction from my voice. "The offshore accounts, the coin collection in Switzerland, none of it was ever part of the estate. Grandpa moved everything before he died, didn't he? That's why you were so angry that night. He'd outmaneuvered you." Victoria's grip loosened as realization dawned in her eyes. "The coins? How did you—" "Grandma left me a key, but not just to the safety deposit box. She left me the key to everything, all the accounts, all the documentation, all the evidence against you. It's already in the hands of the authorities." The sound of cars pulling up outside made Victoria's head snap around. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, illuminating the hallway in an eerie strobe. "Police," a voice called from downstairs. "Victoria Bennett, we have a warrant." Marcus bolted toward the back stairs, but Victoria remained frozen, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "You couldn't possibly have—" I pulled out my phone and played the security footage, not the grainy version from the USB drive, but a crystal-clear copy showing Victoria and Marcus in Grandpa's study, discussing payment details and poison dosages. "Grandma upgraded the security system after Grandpa died," I explained. "Installed hidden cameras everywhere. She knew you'd try again eventually." Victoria lunged for my phone, but I was ready this time. I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her past me. She stumbled. Grandma's diary flew from her hands. It hit the floor and split open, spilling photographs and documents across the hardwood. Footsteps thundered up the stairs as police officers swarmed the hallway. Victoria tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. I watched in silence as they handcuffed my sister, reading her rights as they led her away. One of the detectives stayed behind to take my statement. As I described discovering Grandma's letter and the evidence she gathered, I couldn't help but look through the scattered contents of her diary. Among the papers was a photograph I'd never seen before, Grandma and Grandpa on their wedding day, young and radiant with possibility. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman," the detective said, following my gaze. "She contacted us months ago, sharing her suspicions, but she needed time to gather concrete evidence. That's why she played along with Victoria's manipulation. I realized she was protecting me while building an airtight case." Hours later, after the police had finished processing the scene, I sat alone in the blue room. The lighthouse painting still hung on the wall, now hiding an empty safe, but its secrets had served their purpose. My phone buzzed. A message from Mark, unjust heard from the Swiss bank. "The coin collection is intact. Estimated value, $75 million. Call me when you can." I leaned back in Grandma's chair, emotion washing over me in waves. Victoria and Marcus were in custody, along with several co-conspirators, including Mr. Whitman, who had helped orchestrate the fake will changes. The family's true assets were secure, and more importantly, Grandpa would finally have justice. A soft knock at the door made me look up. Anna, our housekeeper of 20 years, stood there with tears in her eyes. "Miss Olivia," she said, I should have told you sooner. The night your grandfather died, I stood and took her hands in mine. "It's okay, Anna. We know everything now." She nodded, squeezing my hands. "Your grandmother was so proud of you. She knew you'd be the one to make things right." As if to emphasize her words, I noticed something carved into the arm of Grandma's chair. Tiny letters worn smooth by years of use, and truth prevails. Over the next few weeks, the full story emerged. Victoria had partnered with Marcus, a corrupt investment banker, to gain control of the family fortune. They'd started with Grandpa, thinking his death would leave everything vulnerable. But Grandpa had suspected something was wrong and had taken steps to protect his legacy. Grandma had carried on his work, carefully documenting Victoria's crimes while appearing to be a helpless victim. She'd known my sister would try to take advantage of her illness, and she used that assumption to lay a perfect trap. The investigation uncovered other victims, wealthy families whose fortunes had mysteriously disappeared after dealing with Marcus's investment firm. Victoria had been his inside connection to high society, helping him identify targets while building her own real estate empire on stolen money. I donated most of Grandpa's coin collection to museums, keeping just a few special pieces he'd shown me as a child. The offshore accounts were restructured into a charitable foundation, funding arts education and literacy programs, causes that would have made Grandma smile. The mansion felt different now, lighter somehow. I kept most of the antiques but opened up the dark rooms, letting in sun and fresh air. The blue room became my writing study, the lighthouse painting still keeping watch over its empty safe. One evening, about 6 months after Victoria's arrest, I found myself looking through old family albums. There was a picture of all of us, Grandma, Grandpa, Victoria, and me, taken at my high school graduation. Everyone was smiling, looking like the perfect family. Appearances can be deceiving, Grandma had always said, but the truth has a way of coming out. She'd left me more than just money and evidence. She'd left me a lesson about patience, about justice, about the power of playing a long game. Victoria had always thought strength meant taking what you wanted. She never understood that true strength lies in protecting what matters. The next morning, I visited Victoria in prison. She looked smaller somehow, her designer clothes replaced by a drab uniform, her perfect makeup gone. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I placed Grandma's diary on the table between us. "Because you should know who she really was, who they both were." Victoria stared at the diary, her hands twitching as if she wanted to grab it. "They never trusted me," she said bitterly. "Always favored you." "They trusted both of us," I corrected. "You're the one who betrayed that trust." I left her there with the diary, knowing she would finally understand the full scope of her failure, not just the loss of money or freedom, but the loss of something far more valuable, the legacy of two people who had built something worth protecting. Back at the mansion, I walked through rooms filled with memories, the antiques that had witnessed our family's rise and fall, the photographs that told stories both true and false, the quiet corners where a little girl once played while her grandmother watched, planning, preparing, protecting. In the blue room, I sat at my desk and began to write. Not a novel this time, but a different kind of story, the true story of Eleanor Bennet, who had outmaneuvered her enemies from beyond the grave, of William Bennet, who had sacrificed everything to protect his legacy, of a sister consumed by greed, and another sister who found strength in truth. Outside, the sun set behind the lighthouse painting, its beams seeming to wink at me one last time. I touched Grandma's sapphire pendant, a piece of the inheritance that really mattered, and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply letting the truth come to light, one carefully planned revelation at a time. I am Olivia Bennet, guardian of my family's true legacy. Not the money or the mansion or the rare coins, but the wisdom to know that wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the choices we make, the truths we protect, and the stories we leave behind. And my story was just beginning.